What's up, all my movie-loving maniacs? This is your boy Bangful B. We are officially halfway through the year, and so now I thought I'd give you my top 10 favorite films of 2024 so far. But first, here are some honorable mentions. Lisa Frankenstein, I thought was a nice little film with Catherine Newton and Cole Sprouse, in which Cole Sprouse he plays a zombie that comes back to life, and Catherine Newton, who plays Lisa Frankenstein, she starts falling in love with this corpse, and it's a little bit of a weird movie, but a fun little weird romance movie at that. One Love, the Bob Marley movie, I thought was a pretty solid biographical film that focuses on one specific time period in Bob Marley's life that was definitely important, and Kingsley Benadir, the rent was definitely due when he put on this performance. Monkey Man, even though I didn't quite love it, but I do respect it. I thought the action was solid. I thought Dev Patel did an excellent job not only just starring in the film, but directing it. He really went through hell with this film, and shout out to Jordan Peele for endorsing this movie. Godzilla x Kong, while I didn't love it as much as Godzilla vs. Kong, I thought it was a nice little next entry within the MonsterVerse franchise. I just wish there was more Godzilla, but after Monarch, I am curious to see what they do with the MonsterVerse going forward. The Idea of You was a nice little film for Anne Hathaway, in which she falls in love with a guy that's much younger than her, and it's a nice little exploration on a relationship and how that affects everybody. Furiosa, while I didn't love it as much as Fury Road, I still thought it was a solid follow-up to Fury Road. Anya Taylor-Joy did a nice job filling in for Charlize Theron's shoes. George Miller still has it as a filmmaker, but too bad this movie essentially failed at the box office. And then just recently, we got A Quiet Place Day One, which, while I didn't think it was as thrilling and suspenseful as the first two films, I still thought it was a nice little character piece, which is essentially what these movies have always been about, at least from my perspective. And those are my honorable mentions. So now let's get into my top 10 favorite films of 2024 so far. And coming in at number 10 is Abigail, which is a movie I quite enjoyed very much. Though I haven't gone back to it yet, but I thought it was a nice little vampire film with some awesome actors in it. One of them is related to one of my co-workers, and it was just an overall fun time at the movie. At number 10 is The Fall Guy, which I'll admit, this movie so far has gotten the award for a movie I regret not seeing in its theaters, because it is definitely a movie for film lovers. It is a love letter to the unsung heroes of action cinema, which are stuntmen. Ryan Gosling, I was blanking on his name for a sec, but Ryan Gosling, he works in this film. He has great chemistry with Emily Blunt, and it's just an all-around fun film and a love letter to movie fans, cinephiles, action filmmakers, you name it. This movie is for movie lovers. Coming in at number 8 is the first of two documentaries that managed to crack my top 10, and that is The Greatest Night of Pop, in which it is the story of how the song We Are the World came together. But what this documentary highlights is how all these different pop stars of yesteryear came together with all their talent and with all their ego, came together to make a song for the sake of saving lives. And I thought this documentary did an excellent job highlighting that. At number 7 is Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. And while I don't love this, well, I think I'm loving it a little bit more, and we'll see what happens with the rest of this trilogy. But I like Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes mainly for the concept, and I can't wait to watch it when it comes out on Blu-ray just to see how I feel about it. But what I like about it is it takes place over 300 years later after the events of the last film. It separates itself from the Caesar story, and it just shows like how all the teachings and the stories we heard from those first three films can get lost in translation, and how people take it and interpret it the way they want to. I thought this movie did it excellently and introduced us to new characters and introduced us to new conflicts, and I can't wait to see what they do with the rest of this series, or trilogy, I should say. Coming in at number 6 is the second documentary that managed to crack my top 10, and that is Freaknik, The Greatest Party Never Told. It is a documentary that was released on Netflix, and it was definitely informative for me because it's definitely something I did not know about in my personal life. Granted, it's probably a good thing I didn't know about it. A lot of people didn't know about it, but it was definitely something to be known about, and just the way this documentary showed how something that started out with pure intentions just became something freaky, no pun intended. But we've all been to a Freaknik at some point, whether that's spring break or the beach, whatever it is. But we've all been to some form of this party. But here, it was just something for the culture, but then it went south. But it still lives on in some form or another. And now, cracking my top 5 is Inside Out 2, which, as I'm recording this video, has now made $1 billion. So congratulations to everybody that worked on that movie. And while I did not enjoy, well, it didn't emotionally impact me the way the first film did, it was still a worthy sequel. It's definitely a movie for people with anxiety, because this movie had more emphasis on anxiety. And of course, some of the other emotions, but the voice cast, the returning voice cast, is still on point, but the new cast members, they added to this movie perfectly, and the way they just build upon what the first movie established, it was just beautiful. And fuck it, I'll say it. This is definitely a good step in the right direction for Pixar to get back on top. Coming in at number 3 is Bad Boys Ride or Die, which is so far one of my favorite experiences I've had seen in the theater. If you had told me that Bad Boys Ride or Die was one of my favorite experiences in the theater, I would have been like, huh, that is interesting. But they managed to do it. Will Smith and Martin Lawrence still got it. The way they built upon the last film, Dylan Bilal, they continue to show why they are great filmmakers on the come up. And it was just an all-around entertaining film that pleased everybody. At number 3 is Late Night with the Devil, which was a huge surprise for me because everybody talked about how good this movie was, and I watched it and I absolutely loved it. This is one of my favorite horror films of the year. I just love how this is essentially a new take on the found footage genre, in which it takes place in the 70s. On one night, doing this late night talk show in which this guy, he is trying to get up their ratings, and so he has someone that is possessed come on the show, and they try to perform an exorcism, but then all these weird things come on. But I just love the theme of, what is the price of success? What are you willing to do for success? My runner-up is Challengers, which is a movie that I was definitely anticipating, not just for Zendaya, but I just remember watching the trailers for this, and I'm like, this looks wild, and wild it was. I have not rewatched it yet since it came out on digital, but my experience watching this movie was just floored. And this is probably one of my favorite soundtracks of the year so far. Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, the rent was definitely due when they made this soundtrack. Zendaya, the rent was due when she put on this performance. And the two lead actors in this film, they bounced perfectly off of her. But what I love about this movie is just the theme of competitiveness and a relationship that's built around a career. And what does that mean? And what happens when one person loses interest? Now, I will say there are some things within this film that, depending on who you are, you might be off-put by it, but if you can get past that, you will see how brilliant this movie is. And then finally, at number 1 is Dune Part 2. If I said Bad Boys 2 was one of my favorite theater experiences, I'd say Dune Part 2 was one of my favorite cinematic experiences in a movie. Denis Villeneuve, the rent was definitely due when he made this second part of the Dune series. And of course, Zendaya, she is in this again. She is one of the biggest. She was in two of the biggest films of the year so far. Timothée Chalamet, he came into himself within this role. They're writing the Sandworms alone. If that is not a ride at Universal Studios, then I don't know what to tell you. But what I love most about this film is that it really is a second part to an overall story. When this movie was released on Blu-ray, I watched both Part 1 and Part 2 back to back, and it was just an awesome, complete experience. And I definitely recommend you do the same. But those are my top 10 favorite films of 2024 so far. And here is the complete list of everything that came out in 2024 that I've seen so far. And here they are ranked, courtesy of Letterboxd. Check me out at Lassiter Factor. That's it for the day. This your boy, Bankful B. Stay safe. Wash your hands. Peace.